Let's explore some more advanced configuration of Azure Active Directory. And the first advanced configuration that comes to mind is Azure AD Connect. Now, Azure AD Connect is a tool that allows you to create a hybrid infrastructure between your on-premises Active Directory, or as Microsoft sometimes refers to Windows Server Active Directory, and your Azure Active Directory. So if you are in the process of migrating from on-premises to Azure, there is a period of coexistence that you may wish to have. And that period of coexistence requires coexistence between your on-premises identities or user accounts and a cloud version of those user accounts. Azure AD Connect is the tool that will create that mechanism and that trust and that federation between your on-premises solution and Azure AD. You download that tool onto a local server. You then configure it to synchronize your user accounts with Azure Active Directory, sometimes creating user accounts, sometimes linking user accounts. You can also specify that no user accounts are created, but just it is used as a federation mechanism, and there are different configurations and levels of configurations in those. Seamless single sign-on is one of those things that is very common in an Azure AD Connect configuration where your users are actually authenticated to their cloud services. They're using their on-premises user account, and they never are prompted for a second username, password, or any additional authentication than what they do already currently in your on-premises network. So Azure AD Connect is one of those tools that gets constantly updated by Microsoft. And if you are planning to have hybrid coexistence between on-premises and the cloud, I highly recommend that you explore Azure AD much more, Azure AD Connect especially much more. As well, if you have Microsoft 365 and you expect to have that coexistence between Microsoft 365 and on-premises email services or SharePoint services, Azure AD Connect is the tool you'll be using in that deployment. So moving down the list of options I want to talk about here is the identity score. Now, this is another example of those preview features that I mentioned earlier. If I click on Identity Secure Score, you actually see a score that is assigned to your organization. So Microsoft is helping organizations to be as secure as possible, and they actually give you a score that allows you to rate yourself against other companies in your industry to see how secure you are. And how secure you are really means if you've configured as many of these security settings that are available from Microsoft. Now, you'll notice that my score is 33 out of 223, which doesn't seem that high, but in fact, it is very high in comparison to other organizations in my industry. As well, I don't have Azure AD Premium, and a lot of the security functionalities are linked to Azure AD Premium. As well, here under the banner of security, I have risky events. Now, risky events is one of those flags that let you know if there is something unusual in your infrastructure. And specifically, it's user logins. So actually, I see here that it's detecting unusual logins or sign-ins to my Azure AD from specific IP addresses. So if you notice here, my user account, I'm logging in from California, and it's finding that to be an unusual connection because I typically do not log into Azure AD from California. So it's providing me that information so I can review it, and if necessary, I can perform actions onto the user account in the event that that is truly a problem that has been identified in my infrastructure. There are other things here that I can manage, implement, and monitor in Azure AD, and there are a lot of tools that can be configured. There is a separate course specifically in Azure AD in the LinkedIn library, and I recommend that you follow that course.